Thanks for joining us today. I, Dr. Brajesh Gupta, on behalf of Intas Animal Health, take this opportunity to welcome you all in this webinar on production diseases in farm animals, part 2. This webinar is intended to cover ketosis, negative energy balance, fatty liver syndrome, hypomagnesemia, and low milk fat syndrome. I'm quite sure that this webinar will give us insight to diagnose and treat production diseases in farm animals in better way. We had our webinar on production diseases in farm animals, part 1 on 14th September, and it has got very wide and positive response from across the country. And we are pretty sure that this webinar too will give us same feedback and response. Now I request Dr. Nitin Bhatia sir to formally welcome our speaker of the day, Dr. Sivaraman sir, and start the session. Over to you, Bhatia sir.
Thank you, Dr. Brajesh. I once again, on behalf of INTAS and all of us, welcome all the veterinarians who have joined us for the webinar on production disease in farm animals part 2. We thank you all firstly for your overwhelming response to our webinar organized earlier. That was the part 1 of production diseases. Considering the depth required for the subject and a better understanding for all of you, we have with us Dr. Subramaniam Sivaraman, also known as Dr. Sivaraman, as the speaker for both these webinars. Dr. Sivaraman is well known to most of us. In case not, he is a learned veterinarian, academician, clinician, and researcher, working with Tanwas as an assistant professor and head TVCC, VCRI, Tanwas, Salem. Salem is a new college which is coming up, so he has been given the responsibility of shouldering creation of TVCC initially and taking it forward. Dr. Sivaraman is a perfect mix of a field veterinarian and an academician. Why I'm saying so is because he has spent 12 years of his life as a veterinary surgeon in Kerala and 11 years as an academician in Tanwas. He is the favorite of many of the field veterinarians who want to excel in their fields and devote their best to the profession. I, on behalf of all my veterinary colleagues, welcome Dr. Sivaraman as the speaker for this webinar. We hope that this webinar will yet be a good learning for all of us, assisting us in better diagnosis and management. I am also proud to say that today we have veterinarians participating, of course, from India, from different levels like unions, field veterinarians, university vets, and vets working with different more streams of the field. But yes, we also have veterinarians from Bangladesh. We have veterinarians from Pakistan joining us. We have vets from Nepal, Bhutan, and Sri Lanka also joining us. And we have a few from the US also here with us as guests. So once again, on behalf of all, I welcome you. Welcome, Dr. Sivaraman. We are going to talk about production diseases. Yes, with times, production diseases have moved from a simple metabolic disorders to an integrated healthcare program based on approaches which are more nutritional in nature. In majority of these cases, the transmission or the incidence is not congenital or inherited. It's based on an increased demand, a deficiency of a particular nutrient. Production diseases are thus an outcome of negative impact of a particular nutrient that goes below the requirement, is deficient, or is fed in a substantial quantity. Production diseases are an outcome or managemental mistakes which are oriented towards higher milk yield. The success today of an effective production disease control can be measured by lower degree of complications, increased milk yield, improved fertility, increased conception rates, and reduced intercalving periods in the future lactation. I hope this webinar would enlighten all of us on the unfocused and little less diagnosed conditions, because we have dealt with hypocalcemia and hypophosphatemia and hypokalemia in our last webinar, which is commonly diagnosed by all of us with some ifs and buts. But these are the upcoming are the conditions which are less diagnosed. Please note, in the entire next 1 hour plus, your question answer series is open. You have a box towards your right where you can put in questions for Dr. Shivaraman and he will answer you. May I now request Dr. Shivaraman to take charge of the virtual screen and share his remarkable experiences on production disease in farm animals with all of us. Over to Dr. Shivaraman.
Thank you, Dr. Nitin and Intas Pharmaceuticals for giving the opportunity for organizing this webinar. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to all the practicing veterinarians who have joined this webinar from throughout the various part of our country and abroad. And this is the second part regarding the production diseases in farm animals. It's a part 2. In the first part, we have already completed hypocalcemia, hypophosphatemia, hypokalemia. All these things we have seen in the part 1. And after that, some of the feedback from the veterinarians and who have successfully attended hypokalemia, and they have given the feedback that after treating this with hypokalemia with the potassium successfully, they have got a very good result. They have given some feedback to me. Few veterinarians called and they told me that gives happiness, because that is the success of the webinar. Suppose it is useful for a single thing, for a single identifying or diagnosing a single case, that will be more than sufficient and a success of the webinar. And in this session, we'll be going on for the other remaining metabolic conditions. As we told, learning is a continuous process. So we have to learn daily. So day by day, we have to learn and we have to accumulate more knowledge and we have to apply these things. As a practicing veterinarian, whatever we learn, we have to apply in the field conditions. Then only it will be useful for the farming community. So as we discussed in the metabolic conditions, in the part 1, we have completed all these things, milk fever and hypophosphatemia and hypokalemia and all, post-parturient hemoglobinuria. And ruminal acidosis also comes under this thing. Ruminal acidosis and displacement of abomasum. As a veterinarian, we have to be confirmed in the diagnosis of 2 conditions. One thing is acidosis, another thing is the ketosis. We have to be sure. Otherwise, suppose if you are diagnosing a case of acidosis as ketosis and you are treating the acidosis case with the dextrose solution, the condition will be getting aggravated. And also, if you are diagnosing a case of ketosis wrongly as acidosis, ruminal acidosis, and instead of giving hypertonic dextrose solution, you are giving the sodium bicarbonate, that also will completely deteriorate the condition. So entirely, these 2 conditions are entirely different, and we have to be clear cut in our diagnosis. That is the basic thing. For that, clinical examination plays an important role in diagnosing these 2 conditions. So as already telling, as a veterinarian, first rule out acidosis, ruminal acidosis, whether the animal is having acidosis or not. Then you can diagnose all other conditions very easily. So as we already known, the major elements involved in the metabolic conditions are calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, potassium, glucose, vitamin B12, niacin and cobalt. So we have already seen about the calcium and the phosphorus. Now we'll see about what is the role of glucose and this one magnesium. And in this session, the same thing as part 1. Here also, I'm not going into the theoretical aspect of all the metabolic activities or biochemical activities or pathogenesis like that. A nutshell pathogenesis and followed by clinical diagnosis, how to appreciate the clinical signs, how to approach the cases in the field. Because as a field veterinarian, we are going to attend the case in the field level without any gadgets or without any facilities. We are attending the case at the doorstep level of the farmers, and by appreciating the clinical sign and supporting up with the minimum gadgets, how to diagnose all these cases. So first we will see about the ketosis. It's one of the important condition in the ruminants, and many of the cases when the symptoms is obvious, we can able to diagnose it easily. Some cases like subclinical ketosis and all, many of time will be undiagnosed. It will go undiagnosed, or we cannot able to find out the reason, and it will naturally, some cases will recover. Sometimes we may misdiagnose the case. So it depends upon the intensity. Not all the animals exhibit the same clinical signs in ketosis, like nervous form or wasting form, as we are studying in the academic part. Each and every case will vary in the clinical signs. As a comprehensively, you have to identify, you should know how to identify the comprehensive clinical signs of ketosis and how to identify. So the main part of the etiological thing in the ketosis is the negative energy balance. For example, when the animal is calving, after calving and before calving, this is a transition period. Before calving, the animal needs more energy for the development of the fetus. After calving, the animal needs more energy for the lactation. So according to the milk yield and lactation, we have to supplement the feeding management. Suppose 10 liters of milk yield is there, means according to the 10 liters, we have to give the feeding management so that the animal will get energy from the feed, and it will be the balanced energy balance, so that all the metabolic process will be in the normal pathway. So when there is increase in the milk yield, when you are giving the reduced input, naturally there will be a negative energy balance, though the animal will be drawing the energy from the other sources, like fat will be mobilized and it will form the ketone bodies. So I'll explain you how it is forming. So failure of providing sufficient glucose during lactation, I mean, according to the feeding management, through the feed, propionic acid, three things are there: acetic acid, propionic acid, butyric acid. These are the volatile fatty acids produced in the rumen. And propionic acid is the precursor of glucose. So when there is a low energy diet and all giving during the peak milk yield, there will be naturally low production of propionic acid during this time. That will lead to negative energy balance. And in some cases, the high butyric acid content in the silage are more ketogenic. So that is also one of the reasons. The main thing is the negative energy balance and the failure to provide a sufficient glucose during lactation, and a high amount of butyric acid in the silage. And sometimes there may be stress during parturition or lactation and late lactation because of the dysfunction of adrenal. That is also a minimum etiological factor involved. And high protein diet also produces more butyric acid. And starvation due to any other conditions. It may be a foreign body syndrome, pericarditis, peritonitis, any other conditions, any other ailments. The animal is starving. Because of starving, the animal go for negative energy balance. And because of the hepatic insufficiency, that also leads to the accumulation of a ketone body level in the body. So we classify according to the things, the primary ketosis and the secondary ketosis. Primary ketosis is a metabolic cause. It's purely a metabolic cause. As already told, the negative energy balance, and because of the metabolic cause, it's a primary ketosis. Secondary ketosis means is due to any other disease condition. I mean, suppose it may be some gastrointestinal dysfunction, or peritonitis, or pericarditis, or any foreign body syndrome, or any other condition, metritis, mastitis, all these conditions due to leading to starvation of the animal, that leads to secondary ketosis. So primary ketosis and secondary ketosis. Sometimes you will be treating a case of ketosis, diagnosing as a case of ketosis, but it won't respond. Again it will recur. So you have to see the underlying cause. Recurrent ketosis means you have to see the underlying cause of the secondary ketosis. What is the reason? Whether it is having metritis is there or not, mastitis is there or not, any other foreign body syndrome, that we have to rule out if it is a recurrent one. So in the wasting form, the nervous form, alimentary form, starvation ketosis, these are the various forms of ketosis, and this is mainly due to the negative energy balance, that you have to keep it in mind. All the main thing here is the negative energy balance and the improper ration of the feed and low feed supply during the lactation period. So here again the classification is there. Just for your understanding, I'm telling it will not be a confusing one. Type 1 ketosis, that is a spontaneous ketosis, it's a gluconeogenesis pathway stimulating. That is ordinary, we are seeing all the cases and all routine cases that we are seeing the wasting form or nervous form or whatever the things. They comes under a type 1 ketosis. Type 2 ketosis, you might have heard about this one. Type 2 ketosis, that is due to fatty liver syndrome. Here, the gluconeogenic pathway is not stimulated. So whenever you are getting a case of ketosis and you are treating a ketosis case, 1 or 2 days you will be treating the ketosis with a hypertonic dextrosolution, D20 or D25 you will be giving. Again, there won't be any improvement in such a conditions. So you have to think about type 2 ketosis. Here, in type 1 ketosis and all, the glucose level will be low. There will be hypoglycemia. In type 2 ketosis, the glucose level will be high. Hyperglycemia will be there. That is mainly due to fatty liver syndrome. Once you identify these two things, you can manage the case very well, and you can plan your treatment accordingly, and you can successfully treat the case. And most of the time, type 2 ketosis, it won't respond to our routine treatment. So you can tell the prognosis accordingly. So type 3 ketosis is the cows which are fed with the high in maize, results in high butyrate production. So this is another one form. So in dry period, overfeeding also will be predisposing factor for the fatty liver. So that we'll discuss in the fatty liver session separately in the coming slides. So how the ketone body forms. As a veterinarian, we should know about the basic thing, how ketone body is formed. So in the last part 1, we have discussed about how calcium is mobilized and all. Once you keep it in mind, it will be easy for our clinical application. The same thing, ketone body, how it is formed. A low insulin glucagon ratio stimulates the lipolysis from the adipose tissue. Suppose a low insulin and glucagon ratio, naturally it will stimulate the lipolysis from the adipose tissue, and it will comes to the liver and the ketogenesis in the liver. So cows in the early lactation naturally have low insulin and glucagon ratios, and because of the low plasma glucose concentration, they are in the catabolic state. See here, the two major sources of ketone bodies. There are two major sources of the ketone body. One thing is the butyrate in the rumen. We all know in the rumen we are having volatile fatty acids, acetic acid, butyric acid, and propionic acid. So acetic acid is a precursor of milk fat. For milk fat synthesis, acetic acid is needed. Propionic acid, it is a precursor of glucose. So it is a gluconeogenesis. Butyrate, it gives energy. It should be in the that certain level, minimum level. So acetate, propionate, butyrate. These are all three things in the volatile fatty acid that present in the rumen. And the butyric acid, butyrate, which is produced in the rumen, is absorbed as beta-hydroxybutyrate in the blood, and it is used as an energy purpose. Once it is exceeding the normal level, then it is a hazard. So the one of the source of ketone body is from butyrate in the rumen. So it is converted into beta-hydroxybutyrate in the rumen. The other source, the other main source is the mobilization of fat. For example, a cow which is yielding 10 liters or 20 liters of milk yield, a cow is there, cowed 2 months back, and the energy supplement, the feed supplement is not according to the milk yield or the lactation. So naturally, it is not getting the energy from the feed. So what will happen? That is a negative energy balance. So the cow will start getting the energy from the mobilization of fat. So what will happen? Mobilization of fat will occur. So from the adipose tissues, and it is coming to the liver as a free fatty acids in the liver. So it mobilizes fat and it is accumulated as a free fatty acids in the liver. In the liver, these free fatty acids is oxidized. You have to keep it in mind. It is oxidized to acetyl-CoA and NADH as an energy purpose. It's a common normal pathway. See, the free fatty acid is oxidized to acetyl-CoA and NADH. So for oxidation process, what is needed? It needs oxaloacetate. So it needs oxaloacetate. Only in the presence of oxaloacetate, the acetyl-CoA, the free fatty acids are oxidized to acetyl-CoA and NADH. So for oxaloacetate production, we need propionic acid. So what is, so you can clearly identify when there is low feed supply, when you are giving low energy feed, there will be reduced production of propionic acid. Reduced production of propionic acid will lead to reduced availability of oxaloacetate. Reduced availability of oxaloacetate will not enable this oxidation process. Okay, this is the pathway. This is a normal pathway. So once it is oxidized, acetyl-CoA and NADH, it enters the TCA cycle in the presence of oxaloacetate. So oxaloacetate needs propionic acid. Okay. So in need of, when there is low propionic acid level in the rumen because of low energy supplement or low feed intake, naturally it is metabolized. So these are, instead of oxidation, it is metabolized into acetoacetate and beta-hydroxybutyrate. These are all the ketone bodies, two ketone bodies. and that will lead to ketonemia and ketonuria. That will exhibit the signs of ketosis. This is the pathway. Once you understand this pathway, this is very easy to understand, and clinical applicability will be very easy. So the two sources, one thing from the rumen, another thing from the mobilization of the fat. Fat is mobilized to the liver, and in the liver it should be oxidized. It should be oxidized. It needs oxaloacetate. So oxaloacetate, there is a need of propionic acid. So if there is no propionic acid, low availability of oxaloacetate, it cannot oxidize. So naturally it will be metabolized to acetoacetate and beta-hydroxybutyrate. So these are the two major sources of ketone body. So the disease occurs immediately after postpartum. Most of the time, the ketosis occurs mostly around 1 or 2 months because of the peak lactation, during the peak lactation. But we cannot say exactly like up to 60 days, up to 30 days, up to 40, not like that. It can occur at any time according to the availability of the feed for the animal. So early lactation period are more prone for ketosis, even mid lactation also. And according to the availability of the feed intake and the protection level, it varies. And is also less common. And occasionally in pregnant animals also, we can able to see the ketosis, but mostly in the lactation period. And in the wasting form, suppose you are examining the animal, all the vitals are normal. There is no temperature, the heart rate is normal, pulse rate is normal, respiration rate, everything normal, but the animal is inappetent. Some animals, they will take roughages alone, or they won't take concentrate. There will be a slight reduction in milk yield or reduction in the milk yield. Some animals will be standing woody appearance. They will stand, I guess, stand still, like woody appearance. Some animals will have gait abnormality. When you go and touch the animal will suddenly it will fall down. When you go and touch the animal for any clinical examination or to give any injection, suddenly it will fall down. Or when you make the animal walk, it won't walk. It's a reluctant to walk. I will show the video. Gait abnormality may be there. Staggering gait, sometimes mildly staggering gait may be there. In some cases, vision impairment will be there. All signs, everything will be normal, but the animal cannot able to see. Vision impairment will be there. And the reduction in the milk yield will be there. It varies. No, all the clinical signs won't be exhibited in a single case. Okay. Each and every case, you have to comprehensively, collectively evaluate the cases, clinical signs. So it may not occur in all the cases. You selectively, you go for searching of this type of clinical signs during the early lactation period. And it is a form of wasting form. And in the nervous form, it has convulsions. The animal will be having convulsions. Some animals will be having self-biting. It will bite the inanimate objects. It will bite sometimes it will bite the trees or inanimate objects or wherever it is standing, or the trees, or champing of the jaws will be there. Some animals will be having circling. Apparent blindness will be there. Animal will be having aimless walking, wandering. Some animals are reluctant to move, as we discussed earlier. So depending upon the individual intensity of the availability of the ketone body in the blood level, this nervous form will exhibit. Some animals may falling down. Some animals will have, when you touch the animal, it will fall down, circling, chewing movement with the salivation, head pushing, vigorous licking of the skin, all these things will be there. This type of conditions, you will be getting confusion whether it is suffering from ketosis or hypomagnesemia. So in assessing in the condition without any laboratory aid, we are attending a case in the field condition, means sometimes we may be getting confusion with the hypomagnesemia and this ketosis. I tell you, in hypomagnesemia, there will be having tonic-clonic convulsions will be there. So here you can see animal. So the animal cowed 3 months back, reduction in milk yield, and is not taking feed. Thus, we make the walk the animal, and the animal is having vision impairment. It cannot able to see. All other activities are normal, only the gait abnormality is there. So when you make the animal to walk through a place, something like this, and it cannot able to jump over the gutter. Just it will fall down. That indicates vision impairment is there. So just by treating, you can go for the treatment with the hypertonic dextrose solution, the condition will improve immediately. So this another one, this animal, the owner is pulling the animal. It's a reluctant to walk. So normal animal, when they will be pulling, it will walk freely. Some animal, when you are putting the animal the travis, it is reluctant to walk. That is an entirely different one. See, this animal is reluctant to walk. This is also a type of ketosis case. So this is after the treatment. After treating with the hypertonic solution, the animal is walking freely. It is waving the tail and moving the nodding the head and all ears and walking freely. So that indicates the animal becomes normal. So by seeing the gait also, we can able to identify the condition of the ketosis. As already told, in wasting form, the animal will be having inappetence to complete anorexia, milk yield will be reduced, and the animal will be woody appearance. The dung will be normal in consistency. Suppose the dung is semi-solid or watery in nature, you think about acidosis. So you palpate the rumen for presence of any fluid splashing sound. And if it is having fluid splashing sound with the diarrhea, you think about acidosis. Here the dung, everything will be normal. Okay. And regarding the clinical pathology, you can able to see the low blood glucose level and the presence of ketone bodies in the urine and the milk. So we are not having the facilities. Suppose you are in any academic institution, immediately or nearby laboratory is available. You can collect the blood sample, serum sample, and you can evaluate the blood glucose level. And you can collect the urine, and you can go for the presence of ketone body, evaluation of the presence of ketone body in the milk or urine. But in the field practice, how to identify, we are having small gadgets that also you can implement. So the typical thing is a hypoglycemia, hyperketonemia, and ketonuria is the classical one. So diagnosis mainly by clinical signs, by appreciating the clinical signs, as we told, either it may be a wasting form or a nervous form. And Rothras test is commonly used in the field conditions, and the presence of beta-hydroxybutyrate strip test and the response to the treatment. Most of the time in the field conditions, either it may be a clinical or subclinical ketosis, we come to a conclusion or the diagnosis by response to the treatment. So you may be treated with the hypertonic dextrose solution. So after treating with, the animal will respond to the treatment. So you will diagnose as a ketosis. So in the field test, Rothras test, you may be having Rothras powder. I think everyone might have been used the Rothras powder. You take a test tube and put the Rothras powder and 5 ml of urine and mix it. And immediately you can get the discoloration of a pink color will be noticed. And that indicates the presence of ketone bodies. Sometimes we may be getting negative. Sometimes we may be getting negative result in the Rothras test. And why? Because this Rothras test is effective or sensitive only for acetoacetic acid. So not for beta-hydroxybutyrate. And very little reaction for acetone. So acetoacetic acid only, the presence of acetoacetic acid only will reveal in the Rothras test. That's why when you are getting negative result in this Rothras test, but the animal will be showing clinical signs of ketosis. So that is the reason because of this one. So for that, what we have to do, we are having separate strips for identifying beta-hydroxybutyrate. It is available in the market. So this Rothras test is specific for acetoacetic acid only. And you can use this type of urinalysis strip, which is commonly available in the field everywhere. We are using for human and also in the canine practice, everyone is commonly using this. This type of strips also you can use for identifying the ketone body. Number one. So number one, we have seen about Rothras test. Number two, this type of urinalysis strip. And this type of keto sticks reagent strips are available online. So you can very well get these strips in the online. That also you can use it for identifying the presence of ketone body in the urine. It's a very simple, just collect the urine and dip it, and within a fraction of a second, you can identify it. And this type of strips are also available. Beta-hydroxybutyrate strips are also available. It's available here, everywhere. And these type of strips are very highly effective in identifying the beta-hydroxybutyrate in the urine. It's very effective. You can use in the milk also. It's a milk ketone test. And this type of glucometer is available. So you might have seen in all the homes or everywhere it is commonly used. Whenever there is a diabetic patient in home, they will be having this type of glucometer in the home for day-to-day screening of their blood glucose level. The same thing you can use it for grossly identifying the level of the glucose of the animal. So the reagent strips are, the glucose strips are available. So you can get it from every medical shops. It's cost around 1,000 rupees to 1,500 rupees, and you can very well commonly use in the field practice. So for example, you just connect the strip and put a drop of blood, just prick the ear, a tip of the ear or ear vein, and just get a drop of blood. Immediately it will show the glucose level. See, the normal glucose level in the ruminants is around 45 or 50 to 65. That is the normal glucose level. So here it is showing 20 milligram. So it is very low hypoglycemia. So it's very less. So you can if you are using this, if you are having a doubt in identifying the clinical sign and you are getting confusion whether it is a ketosis or not, by seeing the glucose level, you can come to a conclusion. You can narrow down the diagnosis. It will be helpful for you to whether you can use the hypertonic dextrose solution in this condition or not. So very well, we can decide your treatment. For example, you will be treating on with a dextrose solution for more than 1 or 2 days, but you won't be getting the result. But you can see that after seeing this type of glucose evaluation on the spot, you can decide your treatment, whether this animal needs glucose or not, dextrose therapy or not. Suppose your case, I'm seeing the glucose level is showing 112 or 100. Can I give the hypertonic dextrose solution? No, I won't give. So already it is having hyperglycemia. So I will decide the treatment accordingly. I have to go for other clinical examination. What is the problem apart from the ketosis? So it will be more helpful for planning the treatment. And this glucometer, this is the beta hydroxybutyrate. The same thing, strip is available. This is also available in the market. So just put the insert the strip and put a drop of blood, and immediately it will give the result of presence of the level of beta hydroxybutyrate in the blood. Now it's showing 42.6. More than 16 is a positive one. So less than 16 is a negative. More than 16 is a positive one. And immediately you can very well decide the treatment. And for the follow-up also, you can treat it and decide it accordingly. These are all the small gadgets. We can have some investment for our clinical practice, and we can keep it in our practice kit, and use it whenever it is needed. For example, suppose you are diagnosing a case very successfully by clinical science alone, and you are treating it with the hypertonic dextrose solution, it is recovering, means it's well and good. In some cases, you will be getting confused whether it is a ketosis or not, why it is not responding to the treatment. In such a cases, you can use all these gadgets and you can come to a conclusion. The blood glucose level in this case is this much, the ketone body level is this much, so you can plan it accordingly and treat it very easy. So when during our clinical practice, if you are investing a small gadgets for getting a stomach tube or a thermometer, a stethoscope, and this type of this ketometer, glucometer, once in 2 months you get a small gadgets that will be helpful for our clinical practice. That will show the improvement in the field practice. So in this case, it's showing high. So when there is abnormal elevation of beta hydroxybutyrate beyond the level, it will show like this. It is showing high level. It's a ketometer. So the normal blood glucose level is 50 to 65 milligram per deciliter. And in primary ketosis, mostly around the glucose level will be around 20 to 30 like that. In the secondary ketosis, you have to think about when there is increase in the glucose level more than 50, but animal is not responding to a treatment, you have to see the underlying cause. Always you have to rule out the underlying cause. So these are the level of the beta hydroxybutyrate in the blood. It should be less. If it is greater than 2.5 millimole per liter, it is a clinical ketosis. And 1 millimole per liter is a subclinical form. So most of the time you will be missing the subclinical form. The subclinical ketosis always it will be having reduction in milk yield, inappetence. That's all. So just by seeing these things, recently cowed animal, or 1 or 2 months recently cowed animal exhibiting reduction in milk yield and inappetence to anorexia. So think about no fluid splashing sound in the rumen and no diarrhea. The dung is normal consistency. All these things suggestive of treatment for ketosis. So you treat it for ketosis and see the response to the treatment for ketosis. And regarding the treatment, so many veterinarians will have 20% dextrose, 25% dextrose, 50% dextrose. Will be asking out which we have to use. Any hypertonic dextrose solutions we can use, no issues. Either we can use 20, D20, 20% dextrose can be used, or 50% dextrose can be used, 25% dextrose can be used. A dextrose with the electrolyte combination like Interlite, that also can be used. It depends upon the availability of the hypertonic dextrose solutions. So there is no particular about 20, 25, 50 and all. If the 50 is available, it is well and good. Otherwise, you can use the other availability of this hypertonic dextrose solutions. And also you give the dose is around the quantity you have to give is 500 ml to 1.5 liters. That means 1 to 2 sachets or 3 sachets is more than sufficient for the animal, and give it IV. And regarding the speed, there is no slow speed and all. Since it is a fluid, you can give it as a fast, no problem. And like calcium or magnesium, there is no need of giving drop by drop like that. So you can give it as it is. But only the thing, when you are giving more amount of hypertonic dextrose solutions, 1 or 2 times, 1 or 2 days continuously, there will be a transit reduction in the phosphorus level in the body. That is a common one. So in such a cases, when you are going for 1 or 2 days of treatment for the hypertonic dextrose solution, you can supplement oral phosphorus preparations so that it will be corrected. And you can go for dexamethasone 40 milligram. You can give IM. Okay, it will enhance the gluconeogenesis. So steroids like dexamethasone can be given 40 milligram intramuscular. So hypertonic dextrose solution followed by dexamethasone. Some veterinarians, they will be using isoflurane. That also you can use. So you need not combine both dexamethasone and isoflurane. You either use any one steroids, either isoflurane or dexamethasone, or prednisolone also you can use. According to our availability, you can use any one among these 3 things. Any one you can use. And regarding the isoflurane, as already we have discussed in the part 1, you should not use it as indiscriminately for 2 to 3 days like continuously. So without any indication. For example, you are using for a ketosis treatment, no problem. You can use it. Today you are using with the hypertonic dextrose with the isoflurane injection. It's okay. But you are suspecting for recurrent ketosis, again you are treating second day D20 or 25 with the isoflurane, and again you are giving isoflurane. So indiscriminate use of isoflurane will lead to hypokalemia. That you have to keep it in mind. In some cases, so normally most of the cases in the clinical practice that will respond very well to the hypertonic dextrose D20 or 25 with the dexamethasone or D20 with isoflurane. It will respond very well. It's okay. The next day or within 1 or 2 days, I will become normal. The milk will become normal. Feed intake, everything will be normal. In some cases, recurrent ketosis will be there. Second day also it will be there. In such a conditions, when needed, you can use insulin also. Insulin can also be given. So it can be given at the dose rate of 200 to 300 international unit subcutaneously at 24 hours interval. So this is the insulin preparation that you can use. So it's available as an insulin lenti injection as a 500 units vial is available, and each ml contains 40 units. Each ml contains 40 units. See here, this is the insulin syringe. This is commonly used for small operations, and this is commonly used for small animal practice, dog also. Just I'll tell you how to calculate the units. But here for large animal, no problem. For easy to calculate the 300 units. So from 500 units, you can take, for example, 10 ml is there. Each ml contains 40 units. We need 400 units means the 10 ml. 300 unit means accordingly you can collect in the syringe and give subcutaneous. That is very easy to calculate. But you are using a dog, it means the calculation is important. 40 units is equal to 1 ml. See, 40 unit is equal to 1 ml. Suppose in dogs and all, we used to calculate 0.5 units per kg body weight means a 10 kg body weight in 10 into 5, 5. So up to 5, they will take and give subcutaneous in dog. So for that only the insulin syringe is needed. For here, our large animal practice, we can take it directly from our routine syringe, like 5 ml syringe and all, and you can give 200 to 300 units. You can load and give subcutaneous. The only thing you have to keep it in mind, the insulin should be given only after administration of dextrose solutions. Without administration of the dextrose, you should not give insulin. Why? If you are not giving dextrose solution and if you are giving only insulin alone, what is the role of insulin? It will mobilize it will enhance the entry of the glucose into the cells. So already the animal is hypoglycemic. You are giving only insulin means the animal again it will go for hypoglycemia and coma, the animal will collapse. So you have to take care. Why I am telling commonly in the field practice, we will be prescribing D20 and insulin to the farmer, and he will be going and getting these medicines from the medical shop, and insulin may not be available at that time. Only he will be bringing D20. So he will be giving D20 in the morning. So they will be telling insulin will be available only in the evening. So I will come and put the injection in the evening. So in the evening, you should not give the insulin alone. So what will happen? It will go for hypoglycemia. So you have to give concurrently with the treatment. Otherwise, you should not give. So you are giving the treatment of D20 or D25. After that, you are administering you are giving insulin. That is the protocol. Otherwise, don't give insulin alone. It should not be. Okay. So you are not using insulin in all the cases. Whenever it is needed, then you can use it in the recurrent cases after evaluation. So when you have to give insulin treatment, only after evaluation of the blood glucose level, you have to go for insulin. Without evaluation of blood glucose level, you should not go for the insulin treatment. You can easily evaluate the glucose level by using the glucometer. The other line of treatment, as already we have seen, the treatment regime, D20 or D25 hypertonic dextrose solution along with the steroids, either it's a dexamethasone or prednisolone or isopropridone. Okay. When it is needed, you can add insulin also. This is all the line of treatment. The other line of treatment for follow-up is propylene glycol or glycerin. You can give orally 220 gram, 200 gram or 220 gram orally daily for few days. The only thing, you should not get aspirated. It should not get aspirated. When you are drenching the glycerin, in villages and all, they used to give jaggery and all. So they used to give glycerin. So when you are drenching the glycerin, you should not get aspirated. So you can mix it in the feed and you can give it orally as a bolus or electrolyte you can give instead of drenching. Any preparations, whenever you are drenching, you have to take care. It should not get aspirated. Otherwise, it will lead to aspiration pneumonia. The other things you can use a sodium lactate and ammonium lactate if it is available. That also can be used. It is available from the chemical shops, and that also can be used orally. And cobalt and vitamin B12 supplement is very, very needed in the treatment of ketosis, because cobalt and vitamin B12 are the essential component for the production of propionic acid. So whenever you are treating a case of ketosis, you supplement with vitamin B12 and orally cobalt. Any bolus form or any bolus preparations available, you can give it. So that will enhance the production of propionic acid, and we are having a very good follow-up. And as a commercial available, many things are available in the market. You can use these things of gluconeogenic oral supplements like e-booster, and many names are available that you can use it for the follow-up use. So first line of treatment is hypertonic dextrose solution with the dexamethasone or any steroids. You should not combine all the steroids together. Any one you have to use, followed by gluconeogenic preparations morning and evening, so that it will enhance the energy level. So as already discussed, the IV injection of 50% solution of glucose will result in transient hyperglycemia, and that will be increased in the insulin and decrease glucagon secretion and reduce the plasma concentration of NEFA. So as already told, hypertonic dextrose solution, rapid infusion or more amount when you are giving, that also leads to transient reduction in the phosphorus level also. That you can supplement or correct it with oral supplementation of phosphorus or any injectable inorganic phosphorus. Injectable phosphorus are available, oral phosphorus is also available that you can use. So the main line of treatment is hypertonic dextrose solution with dexamethasone or isopropridone. So how to differentiate the secondary ketosis due to the other conditions? Suppose we are treating a case of ketosis, but it is not responding. One day it is responding, again it is recurring. So second day it's not taking feed and all. Then you have to think about the secondary ketosis due to traumatic reticuloperitonitis, abomasal displacement, metritis, mastitis, all these things you have to keep it in mind, and you have to go for the clinical examination. Metritis you can see very easily. During the vaginal examination, you can able to see the obvious mucopurulent discharge, and mastitis is obvious. And abomasal displacement, some clinical examinations are there. You can appreciate the ping sounds. Either it's a left side or right side that you can diagnose. And peritonitis and pericarditis and all that you have to differentiate clinically. So peritonitis, as already we will be discussing, you have to put the abdominocentesis. You have to put the 16 gauge or 18 gauge needle from the xiphoid 10 centimeters caudal, 5 centimeters left or right side lateral, and put the needle and rule out any free flow of peritoneal fluid is coming or not. So all these things you have to differentiate when there is no response for the treatment of the ketosis. The nervous form of the ketosis, you have to think about the rabies, hypomagnesemia, and listeriosis. So always you will be getting confusion when you are attending a case. So whenever you are attending a case of a suspected nervous form of ketosis, and it is not responding, you think about all these things in mind and clinically evaluate and treat it accordingly. See, here you are seeing a case. So the animal is having a slightly excited and having frothy salivation. So frothy salivation and a shivering is there. So in ketosis, there won't be any frothy salivation like this. So see the eyes and all, it is having anxious expression like wild expression is there. And it is a case of rabies. It was previously suspected they are treating for a ketosis, but it is a case of rabies. After some time, it will have a bellowing, typical abdominal bellowing will be there that you can appreciate. Once you appreciate that abdominal bellowing, you can confirm it is a case of rabies and put it under isolation. So see the frothy salivation and the elevation of the tail and pumping of the anus will be there. So in rabies, frequent pumping of the anus will be there. When the animal, you make the animal walk, the hind quarter will be, incoordination of the hind quarters will be there. So this type of abdominal bellowing will be there. See. So this type of abdominal bellowing there will be in case of rabies, not in ketosis. So when you are going for treatment and all, when the animal is showing this type of clinical signs, you have to rule out rabies. So the animal is having frothy salivation with abdominal bellowing. So this is a clear case of rabies. And you need not confuse whether it is a nervous form of ketosis or not. And see another one nervous form. See, here the animal is having involuntary twitching of the muscles, ears, eyelids, and all. And it will mimic, you will be suspecting whether it is a ketosis or hypomagnesemia tetany. So when glucometer and other gadgets are available, immediately you can see the glucose level, then you can go for the treatment and all. Otherwise, in the field practice, what we used to do, you can combine the Myfex solution and D20 so that the response to the treatment will evaluate the cases. So it's a case of hypermagnesic tetany. So twitching of the eyelids and the frequent tonic-clonic convulsions is there. So in field conditions, we are getting confusion. We will be treating with both the conditions. Response to the treatment will evaluate the condition. We will be using both the D20 and magnesium solutions. So this is another form of ketosis. So the animal is licking the inanimate objects and biting or chewing the inanimate objects. And the animal is standing, is lying on the travis. So that is called lean on the stanchion. So it's having a shivering and it is getting the support of the travis. So in home, when you are going and attending the case in the home also, the animal will be going and getting the support of the wall and having some nervous signs. That is also typical of ketosis. At times they are having elevation of the head and all, and frequently shaking the head and all. That also showing in nervous form of ketosis. Like this, frequently champing of the jaws will be there. Frequent champing of the jaws. So when the champing out, that is called smacking of the lips or the champing of the jaws is there, you have to think about oral cavity examination. So first you have to evaluate the oral cavity and see any lesions is there or not. In FMD also, the animal will be having frequent champing of the lips, like smacking of the lips will be there, and drooling salivation will be there. If there is any foreign body in the oral cavity, that also that time salivation will be there. So you have to examine, pull the tongue and examine the oral cavity for these any lesions or any other foreign body. If no foreign body, nothing is available, it's having frequent smacking, you have to think about ketosis. And this is another case. So the animal is not able to get up. See, the animals are having frothy salivation, and see the eyes, it's having anxious expression, and the animal cannot able to get up. And this is a case of rabies. So it's a case of rabies. See this case, the same case. So if you wait for a few seconds, it can exhibit the clinical signs. See, the animal cannot able to stand because of the hind quarter incoordination. And the eyes, see the eyes, you can able to appreciate the anxious expression. Salivation is there. And frequently bellowing, abdominal bellowing. That is a classical sign of rabies. So frothy salivation, anxious expression, abdominal billowing, to differentiate rabies. So you need not to get confused. So without your knowledge or unknowingly, you have been treating for ketosis and not responding when it is showing signs of this type of signs. You have to be careful and put the animal under isolation. And this is another case. See, it's frequently licking the soil, and the animal is alert and frequently licking the soil. 2 or 3 things you have to keep it in mind. See the mucous membrane, whether it is anemic or not, and in the blood protozoan disease, because of anemia, also the animal will be having the licking behavior and it will be eating the sand. That also you have to keep it in mind. Mucous membrane is normal, everything is normal, but the animal is having chewing behavior and licking the soil and all. You have to think about nervous form of ketosis. And in phosphorus deficiency also it will be like that. But in that, there won't be any nervous signs. Only it will have eating the inanimate objects and all, it will be that. So in this video, you can able to see this animal is cowed 2 months back. It's not taking feed and sudden reduction in the milk yield. All parameters were normal. See the animal, when the owner is pulling, it is reluctant to walk. It's not walking freely. He is pulling the animal. This is also one of the classical type of it's a case of ketosis. So when you are pulling or pushing the animal, it's reluctant to walk. All other things, animal is everything normal. So in such a conditions, you have to differentiate from tetanus. You have to differentiate from tetanus. See whether the erected ears are there, any bloat is there, and you can bend, just bend the neck. Whether the neck is bending freely or it is very stiffness. If it is very stiff, not able to bend the neck, erected ears are there, then you think about tetanus. Otherwise, it's a case of ketosis. So after treating the case, it will walk very freely and normally. So you can collect the urine and check it for ketone bodies, and you can see the blood glucose level, and you can treat it accordingly. So case of reluctant to walk. And sometimes the animal may be having vision impairment. So it's called obstacle test. So in such a conditions, you can go for the vision impairment test, is called obstacle test. Video is not playing. So just when you put a pole in front of the animal will, while walking, it will hit the pole and it will be there because of vision impairment. And other animals, they will avoid the pole. The video is not playing. So like see here, the other things you have to differentiate from listeriosis. Here, both eyes, the menace reflex is absent. That indicates the vision impairment. The palpable reflex is also absent. And see the ears, drooping of the ears is there. So these are all indicative of facial paralysis due to listeriosis. So that also you have to rule out by clinical examination. See the left ear is drooped. The left ear is drooped and the salivation is there. And the animal is not able to see the vision impairment is there. By this clinical examination, you can differentiate. This is a case of listeriosis, facial paralysis due to listeriosis. So the differential diagnosis, you can make it according to the clinical examination, and you can very well classify what is the condition and treat it accordingly. Suppose you are treating a case of ketosis and that is not getting response, and you are getting recurrent ketosis. Many of the veterinarians, they used to ask doubt, sir, I have treated a case of ketosis, but recurring. It is again and again recurring means you have to see the blood glucose level. It is a mandatory. You have to see the blood glucose level and rule out the underlying cause. And if it is a type 2 ketosis, mostly the prognosis is poor. As I already told, if the blood glucose level is high, I mean more than 80, it is like 100, 120 and all. Daily it is like that means you have to think about any sepsis, septicemia, any inflammatory conditions, or fatty cow, fatty liver syndrome. These 3 things you have to keep it in mind. So hyperglycemia is a prognostic indicator of a poor prognosis. It won't respond to our treatment. Sometimes the animal may be having nervous signs and all, and ketone body presence will be there in the urine, but the blood glucose level will be elevated. So that cases and all, it won't respond to our treatment. In such a cases, when the animal is having hyperglycemia, don't go for hypertonic dextrose solutions. Instead of that, you treat it for fatty liver syndrome. Mostly the response for the fatty liver syndrome will be poor prognosis. And you have to differentiate from fatty cow and abomasal displacement when there is any persistent ketonuria. So here the negative energy balance is the main thing, plays a role for the metabolic condition of ketosis. As I already told, in pregnancy, when the animal is in the negative energy balance, so it will affect the development of the fetus, one thing. Why in pregnancy it occurs? Because of in the pregnancy, the animal, the uterus will descend down and it will press the rumen, and the rumen size will be reduced. So that the reduced size of the rumen, then naturally the dry matter intake will be reduced, so that the animal will be having negative energy balance. That is in pregnancy. In lactation, during the lactation, during the milk yield, peak yield, the input will be very less. The feeding pattern, the input is very less, so that the animal will be in the negative energy balance. These two things we have to keep it in mind. That will exhibit the signs of ketosis, either it may be a form of clinical or subclinical form. So negative energy balance will lead to infertility and reduced milk yield also. Displacement of abomasum, all these things are consequence of the negative energy balance. So one important, just for awareness, I'm telling, the increased level of NEFA, non-esterified fatty acids in the blood is a clear indication that the animal is having negative energy balance. It's a classical thing. So we are seeing the blood glucose and we are seeing the ketone body level, and you can see the NEFA if any laboratory facilities are available. Suppose why I'm telling this, some are having a farm consultancy, very big farm. So we are having sophisticated laboratory facilities to see the serum samples. Means you can collect the blood sample and you can see the NEFA, non-esterified fatty acids. So increased level of NEFA indicates negative energy balance. So it's a very big entity. I'm not going in detail about the negative energy balance in detail, how the pathogenesis and all. So just as a field practice, you think about negative energy balance means there will be increased level of non-esterified fatty acids in the blood. That will lead to metabolic conditions. So when non-esterified fatty acids exceeds the level, and it will be impairing the hepatic dysfunction. So it will impair the hepatic function. So there will be naturally hepatic insufficiency or hepatic dysfunction will be there. So always supplement liver tonics. Liver tonics you can supplement. And in case of negative energy balance, whenever you are correcting the negative energy balance, you supplement liver tonics for better efficacy, so that the increased level of NEFA can be reduced by improving the hepatic function. And this is all regarding the ketosis. And regarding the pregnancy toxemia in sheep, many of us will be coming across the sheep showing symptoms of pregnancy toxemia. The early signs is the separation from the flock. So most of the animals which are the pregnant is having twins or triplets, they will be having exhibiting pregnancy toxemia. So some of the veterinarians, after seeing all the clinical signs like apparent blindness will be there. Sometimes opisthotonus means elevated head. Opisthotonus will be there. The animal will be stand still. When you pull the animal or when you make the animal push it, it won't walk. And opisthotonus already we know in vitamin B1 deficiency, polyencephalomalacia also, apparent blindness and opisthotonus will be there. So you have to differentiate that also. And reluctant to move and dry and scanty feces. So in clinical practice, in the hurry-burry, some veterinarians used to share some stories. When one of my friends, when he was attending a case of sheep, immediately after seeing the raised head and reluctant to walk, and just he thought it is a pregnancy toxemia, and then the owner told it is a male. So then only he came to know that so you have to see whether it is a female or not, then you rule out all these things. So in pregnancy, twins and triplets are more, the animal in the pregnancy having twins or triplets history will be having more prone for pregnancy toxemia. All the clinical signs you suggest the animal, sometimes it may be having a stargazing appearance or recurrent will be there. So sometimes the animal may keep the head down and it won't respond to any type of your treatment. So differential diagnosis, polyencephalomalacia and pregnancy toxemia. Polyencephalomalacia, the animal will respond very well to vitamin B1 supplementation, very well. So the next day the improvement will be there. So that's because of that reason only, whenever you are treating this type of conditions, you combine the treatment with the vitamin B always. It's mainly due to the negative energy balance or inclement or cold weather, and some of the stress is also leads to this type of conditions. So as we think in mind that it won't be there for always low blood glucose level. It won't be there in all the cases. So many of us will be treating with hypertonic dextro solutions. Sometimes there may be elevation of the plasma cortisol level. Because of that, most of the time the glucose solutions may not be fruitful. So we need not be giving a hypertonic dextro. You can give some glucose solutions. That's enough. Insulin 20 to 40 international units you can give. Electrolyte solutions are the mainly indicated. So main treatment is electrolyte indicated. Electrolytes or fluid supplements is the needed. And if it is not responding to the treatment, you induce parturition. So most of the time, the animal won't respond to the hypertonic dextro solution. And whenever the animal is in the recombinant form or recombinant, it goes for recombinant C, you go for the electrolyte with the DNS solutions, and the pregnancy is indicated. So differential diagnosis, polyencephalomalacia with the pregnancy toxemia. So you can combine both these things with vitamin B1 supplementation. So the other differential diagnosis is, as we already seen in the last class, the part 1, hypocalcemia. That also you can keep it in mind. The other thing is hypomagnesemia. So like there in ketosis, here also you'll be getting confused whether it is a ketosis or a magnesium deficiency. Here the animal will be having tonic-clonic conversions, and the eye expressions will be wild and frequently moving of the ears will be there. Some animals may be having mild salivation may be there. In such a cases, you have to differentiate, as I already told, any type of abdominal billowings there or not, to differentiate from rabies. So magnesium is the major intracellular divalent cation. It's an essential element for all the enzymatic activities in the body. And unlike calcium, the same like calcium, large stores of magnesium is found in the bone, same as like of calcium. But here there is no feedback regulatory for magnesium. So we are having a feedback mechanism for calcium, but for magnesium there is no feedback mechanism. Then how it is? The homeostasis is by the kidney only. So when the magnesium level is dropped below 1.8 milligram per deciliter, naturally the excretion of magnesium through the urine will be stopped. That is the indicator. Okay, so absence of magnesium in the urine is another one indirect indicator of hypomagnesemia. That also you can take it in. So the kidney plays a role of homeostasis in maintaining the magnesium level. So here the etiology, less availability of magnesium in the feed naturally, and the loss of magnesium in the lactation, and the sodium is to potassium ratio in the rumen. That plays an important role. See, when they are feeding lush pastures which are rich in sodium and potassium, that will impair the absorption of magnesium. So when animal goes for having a rich sodium is to potassium ratio, the plant materials or fodder materials, that will lead to the impaired absorption of magnesium from the rumen. That will lead to hypomagnesemia. So that's the same thing. The part 1 also I have told, when you are treating for hypokalemia, so we used to drench potassium chloride syrup orally. So some of the owners, they will feed oral supplementation of potassium chloride in excess. So excess administration of potassium chloride, this potassium in the rumen, that will impair the absorption of magnesium. That also will lead to hypomagnesemic tetany. So young grasses fertilized with the nitrogenous fertilizers, all these things are the predisposing factors and for this hypomagnesemia. An increase in the rumen pH always impairs the absorption of magnesium, and also grasses which are low in sodium and high in potassium will lead to hypomagnesemia. That is low availability of magnesium, and young and rapidly growing pastures are more prone for hypomagnesemic tetany. And sometimes in inclement weather also are the predisposing factors for hypomagnesemic tetany. So in some cases, during the mid lactation or the period of peak lactation, subclinical hypocalcemia, subclinical hypomagnesemia will be there. You can come across. So it will maybe the condition of ketosis, and sometimes it may go as a downer curve also. So it will mimic a condition of a milk fever and a downer. In these times also you have to think about hypomagnesemia. The animal is the peak lactation. Subclinical form of hypomagnesemia It'll increase the susceptibility for milk fever, and predispose the episodes of milk fever and downer cows. So whenever you are getting a downer cow or a milk fever-like condition during the period of peak lactation, you can supplement some magnesium also. So no problem. You can very well treat the condition effectively. And most of the time, the cattle in the first 2 months of the lactation, or any time according to the availability of the feed and all, it varies according to the individual animals. And the nervous form, the tonic-clonic convulsions and all, the tetany is due to the release of acetylcholine and in the neuromuscular system, and it's with tonic-clonic convulsions. And the clinical signs, it varies according to the individual cases. Some animals will be having unusual alertness will be there. Here the temperature will rise, elevated of the temperature will be there, around 40, 41 will be there. Frequent twitching of the eyelids will be there. Frequently twitching of the eyelids will be there. Twitching of the muscles and the ears. Hyperesthesia. When you make the animal touch, it will get excited and it will get convulsions. Hyperesthesia will be there. When you stimulate the animal with the sound, immediately the animal will having a jerking movement. That is called hyperesthesia. When you make the animal, it will have staggering gait and falls down. And with all these things, mimic ketosis, as already told. Okay, but the tetany of the limbs are sometimes in severe form. Tonic-clonic convulsions will be there. In some cases, you will be exhibiting opisthotonus. Opisthotonus means that the raised head will be there. In some cases, nystagmus with the twitching of the eyelids will be there. We have come across in many cases with only nystagmus and the twitching of the eyelids will be there. Frequent champing of the jaws, frothiness of the mouth, and the retraction of the eyelids, loud heart sounds. These are all some of the signs we can able to appreciate in case of hypomagnesic tetany. The wild expression and exaggerated limb movement. Sometimes you may come across some cases when you make the animal walk, it will be having exaggerated limb movement. The animal will be walking like as a NCC walk, like a left and right. It will be walking stiff, and exaggerated limb movements will be there. So while the facial expression will be there, some animals it may be having that spasmodic urination. It will have frequent urination, defecation. All other things will be normal. It will be exhibiting frequently urination and defecation may be there. Muscle tremors will be there. Frequently switching of the tail will be there. And retraction of the head and trismus sometimes. All these, you cannot appreciate all the signs in a single case. You can come across some clinical signs in some cases. Whenever you come across this type of clinical signs, you think about hypermagnesic tetany. And in the sudden movement of the noise or application of the needle also may precipitate violent convulsions. You rule out hypomagnesic tetany. So regarding the clinical pathology, the normal serum magnesium level is 1.7 to 3 milligram per deciliter. And in clinical cases, the magnesium level will be very much dropped. And in herd, serum magnesium and urine magnesium screening can evaluate the hypomagnesemia. The differential diagnosis includes acute lead poisoning because of nystagmus, diarrhea, and tonic-clonic convulsions. You have to think about acute lead poisoning. Rabies, I have shown some of the videos. Abdominal bellowing will be there. Frothy salivation will be there. Then you rule out accordingly. In nervous form of ketosis also, you differentiate. And if you are having a doubt regarding these things, you can go for the clinical evaluation of this glucometer and ketometer to differentiate ketosis or not. And regarding the treatment, you can use magnesium preparations. Either it may be a calcium with the magnesium preparations is the ideal one. That also you can use at 25% calcium borogluconate with the 5% magnesium hypophosphate that you can give IV. About 500 ml, you can give slow IV. And for sheep and goats, 50 ml you can give. Or you can use for 20% magnesium sulfate solution. So you can take magnesium sulfate solution and you have to prepare 20% solution. Okay. So 50% magnesium sulfate, you can give 200 ml subcutaneous. So 20% means you can give IV. So whenever you are giving this type of magnesium preparation, when you are preparing it, make ensure it should not be a saturated solution. When you are making a saturated solution of magnesium sulfate, what will happen? It will lead to death of the animal, euthanasia. Okay, that means the saturated solution will lead to respiratory. The saturated solution will lead to medullary or respiratory paralysis. That you have to take care. You should not. You have to make ensure it should not be a saturated solution. 20% magnesium sulfate solution or 50% can be used. If it is a 50%, you can give subcutaneous, or otherwise you can go for the commercial preparations which is available. And when you are giving this intravenous injection of magnesium solutions, it will return to the pre-injection level within 3 to 6 hours. That's why you are getting the cases again after 6 hours. Again, it is showing nervous form, or again the same type of clinical signs, means you have to go for another dose of injections. So rapid rise in serum magnesium concentration, again it will come back to the normal level within 3 to 6 hours. So the IV magnesium salts always induce cardiac dysarrhythmia, and medullary depression causes respiratory failure. So you have to make ensure the preparations of magnesium given slowly, and the percentage of the solution is most important. 20% make ensure, 10% or 20% make ensure and give it slowly. Otherwise, you can use the commercial preparations. And if you are having any untoward reactions of calcium, I mean you are experiencing any excess usage of magnesium, or any untoward reaction of magnesium, you stop the magnesium solution and you can give calcium solutions immediately to avoid untoward reactions. Followed by orally, it is a mandatory, you have to give it orally. So once the animal is treated with the magnesium solutions and it is responding well, and the animal is should be followed by oral administration of magnesium oxide, 60 grams per day orally. Okay. So magnesium carbonate and magnesium sulfate can also be used. Magnesium oxide 60 grams can be given orally, or you can use magnesium sulfate Maxelf or magnesium carbonate daily as an oral thing for follow-up. You may be getting across hypomagnesic tetany in calves. So the same thing. So milk is a poor source of magnesium. So calves which are fed with milk alone are more prone for hypomagnesic tetany. So for example, calf which is about more than 40 kg or 50 kg body weight, which are fed with only milk diet alone, no roughages or no any other fodder or roughages are fed, and it is being only as a milk as a sole diet, are more prone for hypomagnesic tetany, because milk is a poor source of magnesium. Because for the 50 kg or 40 kg body weight of a calf, the whole milk won't provide a magnesium level. So it will have the symptoms of hypomagnesic tetany. Here, the animal, same like as we already discussed, the animal will be having constant movement of the ears, hyperesthesia will be there, shaking of the head, opisthotonus is raising of the head, and ataxia without circling, and sometimes animal will be running here and there, convulsions will be there, all the nervous signs will be there, and muscle tremors, kicking at the belly, frothing at the mouth, spasticity of the limbs. The limbs are very much stiff, and the convulsions may sometimes exhibited, and the head retraction, champing of the jaws, all these type of nervous signs the animal will exhibit immediately, and it will get a confusion whether it is a case of rabies or hypomagnesic tetany. So mostly in the field conditions, you will be treating with the response to the treatment. When you give for the treating with the magnesium solution, if it is hypomagnesic tetany, the animal will respond immediately. If it is not responded to your magnesium solutions, then you have to keep the animal under isolation for rabies. So during the convulsion, the following signs are present: that the jaws are clenched and the respiratory movement cease, tonic-clonic convulsions are there, and involuntary passage of dung and urine will be there, and protrusion of eyeballs and the retraction of the eyeballs are noticed intermittently in calves. So differential diagnosis in calf also: polyencephalomalacia, and acute lead poisoning, and tetanus, and meningitis. All these things you have to differentiate. Lead poisoning, animal will be having nystagmus and diarrhea will be there, convulsions will be there. It won't respond to your routine treatment of magnesium and all. And enterotoxemia also sometimes may occur in the differential diagnosis. You can include. And polyencephalomalacia, the animal will be normal. I mean, the vitals are normal. There won't be any tonic-clonic convulsions. There won't be any frothy salivation. The animal will be feeding habit will be normal. If you give some feed, the animal will be having chewing, everything will be normal. But the animal will be in the lateral recurrence and frequent pedaling will be there. That's all. Sometimes nystagmus will be there. That is polyencephalomalacia. Tetanus, you can very well easily appreciate. Locked jaw will be there. Stiffness of the limbs will be there. That you can appreciate very easily. Vitamin A deficiency, it won't occur after a few months or like that. It will be occur as a congenital, day-old cough. Day-old cough having convulsions, you think about vitamin A deficiency. Meningitis, the animal will be the coma stage, comatose stage, raised head, opisthotonus, temperature will be elevated or subnormal, and the heart rate will be elevated. That all indicative of meningitis, so that you can clearly differentiate all these clinical signs, and you can accordingly treat it. So treatment: 10% magnesium sulfate solution, 100 ml, slow IV. Ensure it should not become a saturated solution. So whenever you are preparing it, it should be a prompt. 10% means 10%, 20% means 20% solution. You ensure. Otherwise, you can go for the commercial preparations. Magnesium sulfate can be given enema also. Magnesium sulfate, 15 gram of magnesium sulfate can be mixed with warm water, and you can give it as an enema also, so that it will get absorbed and easily, and the response to the treatment will be very effective. Once the animal showing convulsions, all these signs, and you are treating with the magnesium, and if it is not responding to magnesium, you think about release. So these are all the things regarding hypomagnesic tetany in cows. And regarding the fatty cow syndrome, so many of the veterinarians they used to say it is very difficult to diagnose the fatty cow syndrome. Of course, it is true only. But after I will be telling one or two criteria, by assessing that criteria, you can very well come to a conclusion it is a case of a fatty cow syndrome. Otherwise, it's also called as hepatic epidosis or pregnancy toxemia in cattle or fat mobilization syndrome. So as already we have seen the mobilization of excess body fat to the liver during the period of negative energy balance. When the animal is in the negative energy balance, naturally the animal needs energy. It will draw from the adipose tissue. So it is mobilizing fat from the adipose tissue and to the liver. Excess mobilization of fat to the liver will lead to impairment of the liver and leads to liver dysfunction, and fat deposits as occurs in the liver, leading to the fatty liver syndrome. It's especially seen in high producing dairy cows, most commonly seen in high producing dairy cows. Hefty animals, massive animal in the body score, animals which are having high body score are more prone for this type of fatty cow syndrome when they are in negative energy balance. This fatty cow syndrome, mostly they are highly fatal. It's not curable one. So we have to diagnose it and tell the prognosis. And you can term it as a mild, moderate, severe. Mild fatty cow, moderate fatty cow, and severe fatty cow according to the level of the lipids. Is the less than 20% and 20 to 40% moderate, and more than 40% it indicates severe form. So how to identify it? See here, as already we discussed, hepatic dysfunction or excess mobilization of fat from the adipose tissue leads to the deposition of fat in the liver. That leads to hepatic dysfunction, leads to fatty cow syndrome. So mostly related to during the parturition, at the time of a few weeks before parturition or after parturition, are always associated with periparturient diseases. So recently cowed animal not responding to the treatment of ketosis, you think about fatty cow syndrome. So in this case, it is more related to the left side displacement of embolism, retained flat fetal membrane, and milk fever. All these things are predisposing factors. And the early lactation, you have to keep it in mind whenever the animal is anorectic, not responding to your treatment. You have to think about fatty cow syndrome or fatty liver syndrome. In long lactating dairy cows, because of this starvation, partial starvation diet in the late pregnancy, because the animal will be having heavy body score. Body score will be very high. During the pregnancy, some of the farmers, they will reduce the feed because they will think the animal, when you give more feed, the fetus will become very big. So that they will reduce the feed. Or partial starvation during the late pregnancy will lead to reduction in the body weight, and that is considered as another predisposing factor. Here, the clinical signs, we cannot able to come to a conclusion of obvious clinical signs as if for ketosis or any other conditions. Here, the clinical signs are not very obvious. A severe ketosis form, or whenever you are treating a case of ketosis and it is not responding to the treatment of ketosis, you think about fatty cow syndrome. The animal will be complete anorectic, irrespective of your treatment. The animal is not at all taking any feed, and it is completely anorectic and persistent ketonuria. So even after treating with the hypertonic dextro solution and dexamethasone and other line of treatment for ketosis, the ketone body is persistent always. So think about fatty cow syndrome. Some animals may go for recumbency and prolonged recumbency will be there. The terminally the animal will go for tachycardia, coma, and hyperglycemia is another one predominantly factor which indicative of fatigue syndrome. So whenever there is a hyperglycemia, increased blood glucose level, presence of persistent ketonemia or ketonuria, complete anorexia, these three are the criteria to rule out fatigue syndrome. So if you are having ultrasound facilities nowadays in field practice, in large animal, ultrasound plays an important role in case of identifying the ultrasonography, identifying the fatigue syndrome. So here, when you keep the ultrasound in the hepatic area, liver area, you can see the hyperechoic conditions, hyperechoic lesions noticed in the liver. That is a clear indication of fatty liver syndrome. So ultrasonography plays an important role in diagnosing fatigue syndrome. And in case of other things, liver biopsy can also be, it's very easy to perform. So in the right side, see in the right side, the last three ribs, 13, 12, 11. 11th or 12th intercostal space, we can select it. This is a true cut biopsy needle. See, this is a true cut biopsy needle. So draw an imaginary line. So this is a right paralumbar fossa. So draw an imaginary line from the center of this paralumbar fossa. And from the point of the elbow, draw an imaginary line to the last rib. Almost it will intersect a point around the 11th or 12th rib. So liver is located in the right side in between the 11th and 12th intercostal space. The true cut biopsy needle is available in all the surgical shops. It's very cheap only. One time if you are having a hands-on training on the liver biopsy, it's very easy to assess. Just prepare that area aseptically, apply topical lignocaine or subcutaneous infiltration or infiltration of lignocaine, and puncture it with a 16 gauge needle and prick it. And through that, insert this true cut biopsy needle. The tip of the needle should be pointed towards the elbow of the other side. That means the direction of the tip of the true cut biopsy needle should be towards that elbow of the other side. That's the left side. And just take it. It's very easy to have the liver biopsy. See the liver biopsy, very classical, very good biopsy material we got. And you can take it for the evaluation. So you can very well do the liver biopsy after getting the hands-on training, and we can evaluate very easily. These are all very commonly, we can do it in the field conditions. Anywhere, wherever you are practicing, you can do it. And this is called the Beyonce test to rule out fatigue syndrome. See, the liver biopsy, in the true cut biopsy, we have got a small piece of liver. We have got it in the biopsy. And here you are having the three solutions. First is the water. Its specific gravity is 1. The second thing is copper sulfate solution. The specific gravity of 1.025. The third solution, specific gravity of copper sulfate solution, 1.055. So you can very well get it, these solutions whenever you are having this in the nearby some institutions or some colleges. You can request the chemistry department to get the copper sulfate solution at this specific gravity. They will very well prepare and give it in a small tubes that we can keep it for our practice. So copper sulfate solution of 1.025 and 1.055, you are keeping it in a small tube. And the liver biopsy is, after getting the liver biopsy, putting inside. See, the liver biopsy is sinking in the water. And you have to see whether it is sinking in water or floating in water. Here also it is sinking in the copper sulfate solution, 1.025. And here it is floating. So according to this, we can have the interpretation. See, in the third one, it is floating. So according to the sinking ability or the floating ability, you have to go for the interpretation. So this is according to this. See, normal one, when you put the liver biopsy, it will sink in water. So normal one, it will sink in water. See, it will sink in all the three solutions. It is normal. When it is floating in water means it indicates severe form. When it is floating in all the three solutions, it is indicative of severe form. If you are not having copper sulfate solution, 1.025 or 1.055, suppose only if you are having water alone, you can put it and see that will give interpretation of only severe form alone. We cannot interpret mild or moderate. We can see whether it is a normal or severe, that you can see. If you want to know whether it is a mild or moderate, you have to keep the other two solutions, 1.025 and 1.055 copper sulfate solution. And according to this, you can go for interpretation. In normal liver, I mean without any fatty liver, normal liver means it will sink in all the three solutions. Severe form of fatty liver will float in all the three solutions. Okay. So we can interpret it accordingly. It's a very easily done in the field conditions wherever we are. Only the thing we need is true cut biopsy needle and a hands-on training regarding the liver biopsy, so that we can confirm and say this is a fatty cow syndrome. So to suggest to confirm a fatty cow syndrome, all the criteria are available. You are seeing the glucose level. The glucose level is elevated. Hyperglycemia is there. Ketonuria, persistent ketonuria is there. And you are taking the liver biopsy and seeing these Bjornstad test, and animal is not responding to the treatment of ketosis, complete anorexia. All these collectively you can term it as a fatty liver syndrome, and you can tell the prognosis. And treatment, regarding the treatment, mostly unfavorable. As already told, severe form mostly unfavorable. What is mild case? Mild form of fatty liver will recover slowly. For that, you can give the hepatic stimulants. Liver tonics can be supplemented, and instead of giving repeatedly going for 50% dextrose solutions, one time you can give. In the treatment of mild fatty liver, one time D20 or D25 can be given one time. In the repeated treatment, you see the glucose level. If it is hyperglycemia, don't go for repeated treatment of hypertonic dextrose solutions. Then you can go for supplementation of propylene glycol, 300 ml orally, daily for 5 days orally. And you can go for isoflupyridine, as already told, 1 or 2 days alone. And cyanocobalamin, vitamin B12 supplementation can be given 1 to 4 milligram per kg IV, and daily for 2 to 3 treatments can be given. Balanced electrolyte solutions is mainly needed. Instead of giving hypertonic dextrose solutions daily, balanced electrolyte solutions can be given for the animal, and see whether the animal is responding to the treatment or not. And if it is a mild form, it will respond to your treatment. Sometimes glucagon can also be given 15 milligram and subcutaneous for 14 days. It's one of the type of protocol, but a mild form only responds to the treatment. Moderate and a severe form, it won't respond to the treatment. And this is regarding the fatty cow syndrome. And as I already told, and you can treat it and see how you can see the response to the fatty cow syndrome. Whenever you are treating the cow with the fluids and balanced electrolyte solutions, and the animal start taking feed, it is responding to the treatment. Even after the treating, if the animal is completely anaerobic, that is a poor prognostic indicator. What are all the poor prognostic indicator? Elevated glucose level is the poor prognostic indicator. Persistent ketonuria, that is also the poor prognostic indicator. The other one is the low milk fat syndrome. So with this, we can conclude this. This is also a common thing in the field conditions. And many of the farmers, irrespective of their producing, irrespective of their feeding management and all, they used to have a hefty animal purchase for 90,000 or 80,000 like that. But after getting the milk and all, no, when they are going and giving to the society, they are not getting enough money because it is not reaching fat percentage. So the payment will be made only according to the fat percentage. If there is low fat percentage below the level, as the prescribed level below that, you cannot get the money for the produced milk. So it is economic important condition of this condition, low milk fat syndrome. So the main thing is the lack of roughages. So lack of roughage is one of the main thing, and lack of roughage and more feeding of concentrates. These two things are having predisposing cause. So many of the farmers, they would have, when conversation you could have get the history, they will be telling mostly the morning milk, they are having low milk fat. Evening milk, they will be having milk fat percentage a little bit higher than the morning milk. The reason is that there is a long interval between the afternoon milking and the morning milk. So afternoon they are milking, and the next they are milking in the early morning or the morning. So there is a prolonged interval. So naturally, there is an increased quantity of the milk, increased yield of the milk will be there, but low in the fat percentage. So in morning milk, afternoon milk, the quantity of the milk will be somewhat less than the morning milk, but the fat percentage will be more when compared to the morning milk. Okay, this is the reason. So they used to say morning we are not getting the reading, morning we are not getting the fat percentage. That is the reason behind that. Then another one here, what you have to correct it, you have to correct the feeding management. So you should advise the farmer to have the split feeding. The carbohydrate should be splitted at some intervals, and you have to feed the carbohydrate. The split feeding of the carbohydrate should be advised. And you have to advise the farmer to give more roughages, especially paddy straw or any straw. Whenever the animal is having, what is the reason behind that? The animal is fed with the paddy straw or any straw materials or roughages, the animal will start chewing. Whenever it is chewing, the animal will start secreting the saliva. When there is saliva secretion is there, the saliva acts as a buffer mechanism in the rumen, and it will maintain the ruminal pH. That is one of the important reason behind the supplementation of roughages. And another one, when you give the straw, paddy straw, the animal will have more production of acetic acid. So acetic acid is produced more. So acetic acid is a precursor of milk fat percentage. So fat percentage will be increased. So supplement for paddy straw. Whenever in the summer conditions, the animal won't take a paddy straw or any other straw in the afternoon conditions, so that you can give it in the evening time, so that the animal will take more straw. So rumination should be that, chewing should be that. That will enhances the rumen buffer, so that the rumen pH is maintained and milk fat percentage is increased. Another one reason is subacute ruminal acidosis, SARA, subacute ruminal acidosis or acidosis condition. That also will lead to reduction in the milk fat percentage. All these things we have to keep it in mind and treat it accordingly. So one of the line of treatment is that they used to give vinegar, 5% glacial acetic acid orally, around 500 ml orally, that you can give, you can drench it to the animal. But one of the disadvantages is that it is an irritant. When you administer it orally, it is an irritation. It will irritate. The feed intake will be reduced. If you're having stomach tube, you can drench it. You can put the stomach tube and drench it. The another one is that only when you are giving vinegar today, I mean, if you are giving tonight, tomorrow morning you will be getting the fat percentage. Again, the fat percentage will be reduced if you are not giving this. And practically, you cannot give this vinegar daily. So it is a not economical one also. So daily feeding the vinegar is not a permanent solution. So for that, you have to correct the feeding management. So split the concentrate feeding, feed more roughages, and supplement rumen buffer mechanisms like magnesium oxide and commercially available things you can give. And magnesium oxide can be given, or magnesium carbonate also can be given. Magnesium oxide can be mixed with the feed and you can give it to the animal. So 1 gram per kg body weight. Magnesium oxide can be given at the rate of 1 gram per kg body weight. You can mix it with the feed and you can give it. And it will maintain the ruminal pH, so that you can correct it and you can increase the milk fat percentage. So these are all the common practical things to increase the milk fat percentage. I hope we have completed all the metabolic conditions, right from ketosis to metabolic in the low milk fat syndrome. So thank you very much, and go for a discussion.
Thank you very much, sir. It was quite elaborative and informative session, and most importantly, with practical approach. You have shared your years of experience and expertise in very lucid way, and I'm quite sure that this will help all our colleague vets in field conditions. Now, sir, we have a number of queries. To be very precise, it is more than 400 plus queries we have got. But due to time limitations, we'll not be able to take all the questions. We are picking up a few important questions, and rest of the questions will be answered through mails. So to begin with, sir, there is one question: why and how young animals, especially heifers, suffer from hypomagnesemia?
Young animals means it's according to the age, not young animals. If it is a calf, they are asking is it a calf or young one?
Young one heifers. Question
Heifers.
is young one heifers.
Young one heifers, that's not when there is a predisposing factor. The availability of magnesium plays an important role as a predisposing factor for all animals, young one or adult one and all. If it is a calf and it is fed with, as already told, if it is only fed with the milk diet alone, and milk is a poor source of magnesium, that is one of the predisposing things. The another thing, there is no homeostatic mechanism for any magnesium maintenance. Only kidney plays an important role. Suppose when the animal is having any elevation of the sodium to potassium ratio in the rumen or any other predisposing conditions in the feed which impairs absorption of magnesium, naturally it will go for hypomagnesiemic tetany.
Right, sir. Then there is another question. In race bulls, the owner feeds more quantities of horse gram and grains. Then what will be the status of ketone bodies in such animals? And there is regular complaint from farmers in these animals with stiff gait. So is it related to ketosis?
Yeah, I think your question is asking regarding the administration of more maize or?
It is horse gram and grains.
No, grains, yeah. So naturally, when they are feeding more grain, first thing you have to rule out the subacute ruminal acidosis. That's all. More grains or more maize, whatever may be the thing, it will lead to production of propionic acid only. So when it is fed with the excess quantity, that may lead to acidosis or subacute ruminal acidosis. That you have to rule out. And in such a conditions, evaluation of the glucose level will be helpful for rule out acidosis. That's all. If they are giving in more quantity, most of the time, it may be leading to subacute ruminal acidosis. Then you will be passing loose dung or reduction in the milk fat percentage like that. So whenever that is a stiff gait and all is there, you just treat it according to the ketosis. If it is not responding, then you see the glucose level and treat it accordingly.
Right, so there's another question, whether the glucometer strips are validated for use in cows and buffalo for ketosis diagnosis?
Yeah. So mostly there won't be any much variations according to the serum blood glucose level and the this strip evaluation. Mostly a minor, small difference will be there. But in field practice, it will give a clue. So because since we are screening as far as in the home, for diabetic patients, for screening our blood glucose level, the same thing. So it will be helpful for deciding your treatment. So whether this cow needs a continuous support of hypertonic dextrose solutions or not. So it will give you a supportive aid, and you can narrow down the diagnosis and you can select or decide the treatment. That's all. It will be useful for you. So it will be very much helpful for treating in field conditions. For example, in day 1, you are treating for ketosis with the hypertonic dextrose solution and it is not responding. And the next day, if you are seeing the glucose level and it is showing if it is elevated glucose level, then you can decide there is no need of any administration of hypertonic dextrose. So it will be very much useful. Minor variations on this. So it is very much useful only. Yeah.
There is another question from another doctor, sir. During advanced pregnancy, why do we observe edema in lower limbs?
In advanced pregnancy, sometimes you may be getting edema in the lower limbs and also from the udder and also up to the perineum and also up to the umbilicus also. In case of advanced pregnancy, that is due to naturally most commonly seen heifers. Actually, that I was about to include that also. This one, physiological udder edema, that also comes under these things. Cows which are having the more metabolic predisposing causes for metabolic conditions will have a physiological udder edema also. The same concept of the physiological udder edema, sometimes it may be exhibiting this lymphedema also. So lymphedema and sometimes bilateral lymphedema, you have to think about hypoproteinemia. Hypoproteinemia has to be ruled out. Any hepatic insufficiency also has to be ruled out. So in such a condition, serum evaluation of total protein and albumin will be very much helpful. So same related to the physiological udder edema.
Sir, okay, there is another question, sir. Role of oxidative stress in production diseases and how to overcome them.
The oxidative stress as already told, that pathogenesis, naturally the from the mobilizing fat from the adipose tissue, it has to be mobilized and coming to the liver, and it should be go for the TCA cycle and the oxidation process. And if it is not there, when it is go for metabolization, it is going for a ketone bodies formation. And due to that time, there is a great impairment for the liver dysfunction. So in case of this type of oxidative stress and all, supplementation of liver tonics can be helpful to overcome that oxidative stress. So during the treatment of ketosis and all, or any other line of treatment, or during the fatty cow syndrome also, supplement liver tonics to avoid this type of oxidative stress. And also whenever you want to go for a farming practice, you want to evaluate these animals are in negative energy balance. A simple thing, screen the animals, suspected animals for NIFA, non-esterified fatty acids. Serum elevation of NIFA is an indicator of negative energy balance.
Right, sir. Another question is, please suggest what should be the feeding pattern at early calving stage?
Yes, already discussed in the part 1, we have discussed, no? So the late lactation, I mean during the pregnancy, low energy and low energy diet. After calving, during the lactation period, high energy diet. So this is the common practice in the farming community. So whenever you are giving high energy diet with fiber and all, whenever you are giving high energy, avoid giving at a single time. That is it. So as I already told, split feeding is advised. Split type of concentrate feeding should be advised to avoid ruminal acidosis or subacute ruminal acidosis, so that you can increase the energy level in the peak lactation period. So during the lactation period, always animal needs energy supplementation. Early lactation.
Right, sir. And there is another question: is there any possibility of mixed infection, that is a mix of ketosis and milk fever?
No,
and what should be the treatment of that?
Yeah, it's a condition. It's not infection. It's a condition. It's a milk fever and hypomagnesemia. You are asking, no? The same thing as already told. Many of the cases, like milk fever-like conditions or Downer cow syndrome-like conditions coming in the mid-lactation period, always you think about hypomagnesemia. So during the after calving, some 3 months or 4 months during the peak lactation or that period, the animal sometimes may go for recumbency, like milk fever-like conditions. You think about hypomagnesemia with the milk fever conditions. And after treating with the magnesium solutions and the calcium and all, the animal is not responding, then you differentiate from the other conditions already told because of peritonitis and all that you have to rule out. So during the mid-lactation, we used to come across these type of conditions. Yes.
Right, sir. There are a number of queries regarding they require this recorded video. So with your due permission, we would be able to share with them.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. Okay, thank you.
And there is one more question, like role of glycerin in managing ketosis.
It's a gluconeogenic precursor, that's all. Glycerin or glycerol is naturally a gluconeogenic precursor. As we are using the commercial preparations, many things are available, no e-booster, glucoboost, or any other the commercial preparation. Same thing. Our e-booster is there, no? The same thing. Glycerin is a gluconeogenic precursor that you can use to give energy. Only the thing you should avoid aspiration. When administration of glycerin, you have to avoid aspiration. Many of the cases we are getting aspirated. So you give it as a mix it with the feed and give.
Right, sir. Then there is a question like how to diagnose meningitis in farm animals.
Yeah, meningitis is mainly in the so due to the infection. Mainly it's an infection. It's a bacterial infection. It's most common in young ones in the calves because of the navel ill and umbilical affections, ascending infection that leads to meningitis in calves. The same thing in adult animal also it will get because of the bacterial infection. Either it may be due to listeriosis or any other bacterial infection. The animal will be in the lateral recumbency, opisthotonus, and sometimes nystagmus will be there, and pedaling movement and all will be there. So there won't be any tonic-clonic conversions won't be there. Opisthotonus and the lateral recumbency, and frequent involuntary pedaling of the limbs will be there. In such a conditions, you have to think about meningitis in a large animal. Mostly one condition is there, TEMI, thromboembolic meningoencephalitis, Haemophilus somnus. All these are causes of meningitis. So the classical thing, the animal will be in the lateral recumbency. Sometimes nystagmus may be there, and involuntary pedaling of the limbs will be there. This type of cases, you can go for treating with oxytetracycline or sulfa-trimethoprim intravenously. Mix it with the normoxilin, you can go for intravenously, because these two drugs will cross the blood-brain barrier and will be effective. And treat it with vitamin B1 supplementation, and you can go for mannitol also, according to the clinical condition.
All right, sir. So as said earlier, like there are a number of questions and we'll not be able to take because of time limitation, but all the questions will be answered. We'll be in touch with Sivaram sir for your queries, and it will be responded by him. So thank you very much, Sivaram sir, for such a wonderful and interesting session. And you have given your valuable experience. I would say you have shared your valuable experience with our colleague vets. And we are hoping to conduct such type of more webinars, and we'd like to see you all colleague vets soon with at another important and exciting topic in our next webinar session. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Brajesh, and thank you, Dr. Nitin Bhatia and Itas Pharmaceuticals, and all the participants. Thank you very much.